He laughed when she cried, called her too stupid to survive without him. Then he signed the divorce papers while she was pregnant, eyes cold, hands steady, already reaching for another woman's waist. 5 years later, standing outside an elite private school, the ruthless billionaire felt something he had never known before: fear. Hello, friends. I'm Mr. James, and I'm so happy you're here. My stories are full of emotions, suspense, and unforgettable moments. If you enjoy them, please drop a comment below and write, "I love Mr. James. Your support means the world and keeps the stories coming." The house was too quiet that night. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses against your chest, the kind that warns you something is about to end. Amara stood near the window, her fingers trembling as they gripped the curtain. Outside, city lights glittered like they didn't care. Inside, her heart was breaking silently. She had been waiting for hours, waiting with hope she didn't want to admit, waiting with fear she couldn't escape. The door finally opened. Ethan didn't rush in. He never did. He walked in like a man who owned everything, because he did. His tailored suit was perfect. His blue eyes were cold. His face carried no emotion, not even exhaustion. Amara turned slowly. "Ethan." Her voice cracked on his name. He didn't answer. He loosened his tie instead, sat down, crossed his legs, like this was a meeting, not a marriage. She took a step closer. "I made dinner," she said softly. "I waited." He smirked faintly. "I didn't ask you to." That smile hurt more than shouting would have. Amara swallowed hard. "There's something we need to talk about," she said. He finally looked at her. Really looked. From her tired eyes, to her trembling hands, to the quiet pain she tried to hide. "Talk," he said flatly. She placed a hand on her stomach. The gesture was small, but it changed everything. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. Silence fell, heavy, dangerous. Ethan stared at her like she had spoken a foreign language. Then he laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to cut. "You're joking." Her eyes filled instantly. "I'm not." He stood up abruptly, ran a hand through his hair. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" "Yes," she said. Her voice shook. "But I thought—" "You thought," he interrupted sharply. "That's your problem." She flinched. "I thought you'd be happy," she said. "I thought this would bring us closer." Ethan turned toward her fully now. His face hardened. "Closer?" He scoffed. "You think a child fixes things." "It's our child," she pleaded. "That doesn't change anything," he snapped. Her lips trembled. "I love you," she said. That stopped him. For a second. Just one. Then his eyes went cold again. "Love," he repeated slowly. "Love made you weak." Those words sank deep. "I stood by you," she said. "I left everything for you." "And I gave you everything you have," he replied. "You were nothing before me." Her breath caught. "I was someone," she said quietly. "You were naive," he corrected. "Soft. Useless in my world." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I tried," she whispered. "I learned. I stayed silent when you ignored me. I stayed loyal when you stayed late. I stayed hopeful when you stopped touching me." Ethan looked away, annoyed. "This is exactly why," he said. "Why what?" "Why this can't work." Her heart began to race. "What are you saying?" He walked toward the table, picked up a file, placed it in front of her. Divorce papers. Her legs nearly gave out. "You're leaving me?" "No," he said coldly. "I'm correcting a mistake." She stared at the papers, then at him. "You promised," she said. "I promised ambition," he replied. "Not forever." She shook her head desperately. "I'm carrying your child, and I won't let it ruin my life." Those words shattered her. She stepped back. "You're choosing her," she said. He didn't deny it. "She understands me," he said. "She fits my world." "What about me?" You never did. Her chest tightened. I stood with you when you had nothing. And now I don't need you, he replied. Something broke inside her then, not loudly, quietly, painfully. You're cruel, she said through tears. No, he replied. I'm honest. He looked at her one last time. You're too stupid to survive without me. That was the moment, the exact moment. Her soul cracked. She didn't scream, didn't beg. She simply stood there, holding her stomach, holding her breath, holding her shattered heart together. Ethan walked past her. The door closed, and the silence returned. He never looked back. Amara slowly sank to the floor. Her tears fell freely now. She wrapped her arms around herself, around her unborn child. I'm sorry, she whispered. I failed you. The room felt too big, too empty. She stayed there long after the lights outside dimmed, long after hope tried to return and failed. Her world had ended, but something inside her stirred. Pain, fear, and a fragile promise she didn't yet understand. As Amara lay on the cold floor, clutching her stomach, unaware that one choice she was about to make that very night would change not only her life, but would one day bring the most powerful man in the city to his knees. Amara did not move for a long time. The floor felt colder than her fear. Her back pressed against the wall as if the house itself was pushing her away. She listened, not for footsteps, not for apologies. She already knew none would come. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Slowly, she pushed herself up. Her legs shook. Her body felt heavier than before, not just with life growing inside her, but with truth settling into her bones. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. No one was there to tell her to stop crying. No one was there to comfort her. And for the first time, that realization hurt less than expected. She walked toward the bedroom. The bed was untouched, cold, empty. His side looked exactly the same as always, perfectly arranged, untouched by emotion. She sat down slowly. Her hands rested on her stomach again. The baby moved slightly, a small flutter, a reminder. I'm still here, she whispered. That movement did something to her heart. Not pain, purpose. She stood up, went to the mirror. Her reflection startled her. The woman staring back looked smaller, older, but her eyes were different. They were awake. She had begged for love once. She would never do it again. A sound echoed from the hallway. Her phone vibrated on the table. She already knew who it was. She still picked it up. One message, cold, final. Lawyer will contact you tomorrow. Don't make this difficult. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She didn't reply. She turned it off. That simple act felt rebellious. She opened the wardrobe. Most of the clothes were his choices, colors he liked, styles he approved. She pulled out a small suitcase. It had dust on it. She hadn't used it since before marriage. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she began packing. Not everything, only what mattered. A few clothes, her documents, a small framed photo of her mother. She paused there. Her throat tightened. I need you now, she whispered to the picture. Her hands trembled again. She breathed through it. In, out, slow, careful. She moved through the house quietly, not because she feared waking him, but because the walls had heard enough. At the door, she stopped. Her hand hovered over the handle, 5 years of memories pressed against her chest. The good ones, the ones she tried to save. She closed her eyes, then opened the door. The night air hit her face, cool, sharp, real. She stepped outside, the door shut behind her. This time she didn't look back. The taxi ride was silent. The driver didn't ask questions. She was grateful for that. Her hands stayed on her stomach the entire way. The city lights passed by like strangers. Her phone vibrated again. She ignored it. Each vibration felt weaker than the last. She arrived at a small apartment. Old, modest, safe. A friend had given her the keys weeks ago, just in case. She hadn't believed she'd ever need them. She unlocked the door. The space smelled like dust and fresh paint. Bare walls, no memories. She sat on the floor slowly. Exhaustion hit her all at once. Her body ached, her heart throbbed. She leaned back against the wall and finally let herself cry. Not quiet tears, not controlled sobs, but deep, shaking cries that came from somewhere ancient. She cried for the love she gave, for the future she imagined, for the child who would never know warmth from that man. Her breathing became uneven. She pressed her palm harder against her stomach. A sudden pain rippled through her lower back. She froze. Another wave followed, sharper. She gasped. "No," she whispered. "It's too soon." She tried to stand. Her legs nearly failed her. She steadied herself against the wall. Her breathing became shallow. Fear rushed in. Not for herself. For the baby. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, scrolled through contacts, stopped. There was no one she could call. She slid back down to the floor. Another pain hit. Stronger. She cried out softly, tears mixed with sweat. "Please," she whispered. "Please stay." Her body curled instinctively. Her mind raced. Hospital. She needed to get to a hospital. She pushed herself up again. Pain stabbed through her. She screamed this time. The sound shocked even her. She grabbed her coat. Her keys. Her bag fell. Papers spilled across the floor. Divorce documents. She stared at them for a second, then kicked them aside. Another pain. She doubled over. Her vision blurred. She fumbled with the door. Her hands slipped. She slid down again. Her breath came in sobs. She pressed her forehead to the cold floor. "I can't lose you," she whispered to her belly. "I won't." She crawled to the door, pulled herself up inch by inch. The hallway felt endless. Each step hurt more than the last. By the time she reached the street, her strength was fading. She waved weakly at a passing car. No one stopped. Another wave of pain crushed her. She cried out again. A woman across the street noticed, rushed toward her. "Are you okay?" Amara could barely speak. "I'm pregnant," she gasped. "I think something's wrong." The woman didn't hesitate. She called for help, held Amara's hand. "It's going to be okay," she said firmly. Amara wanted to believe her. Sirens echoed in the distance. Her vision dimmed. Her grip tightened on her stomach. She whispered one last thing before the pain swallowed her whole. "I chose you." As the ambulance doors slammed shut and the city lights blurred above her, Amara lost consciousness, unaware whether she would wake up alone or wake up having lost the only reason she found the strength to leave. Darkness held her gently at first. Then it tightened. Amara drifted in and out of awareness as the ambulance sped through the city. Sirens wailed above her like warnings she was too tired to understand. Her body felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. Every bump in the road sent a sharp reminder through her spine, but even pain felt muffled, filtered through exhaustion and fear. A voice cut through the haze, calm, firm, professional. "Stay with me, okay? Just breathe." She wanted to answer. She tried. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her hand twitched weakly near her stomach, instinctively searching for the life inside her. When she felt a gloved hand gently guide it back, panic surged. "My baby," she whispered, though it barely escaped her throat. "We're taking care of you," the paramedic said. "Just keep breathing." She obeyed because that was all she could do. In, out. Each breath felt like a promise she wasn't ready to break. The hospital lights were blinding when she was wheeled inside. White ceilings rushed past her. Voices overlapped. Someone asked questions she couldn't answer. Someone else pressed something cold against her arm. The smell of antiseptic filled her lungs. Then everything went quiet again. When she woke, the silence was different, not heavy, not cruel, just still. Her eyes fluttered open slowly. The room was small, pale, clean. A single window let in early morning light. Machines beeped softly beside her bed, steady and indifferent. She tried to move and felt a dull ache spread through her lower body. Panic hit instantly. Her hand flew to her stomach. It was still there. She exhaled a shaky breath she didn't realize she had been holding. A nurse noticed her movement and approached. She had kind eyes, the kind that didn't rush you. "You're awake," she said gently. "That's good." "My baby," Amara whispered again. "Is my baby okay?" The nurse hesitated for half a second, not long enough to alarm someone stronger, long enough for Amara to notice. "We managed to stop the contractions," the nurse said carefully. "You had severe stress-induced pain. You're still early, very early." Amara swallowed hard. So you need rest," the nurse finished, "and calm, as much as possible." Calm. The word felt cruel. Tears slid silently down Amara's temples into her hair. She turned her face toward the wall, embarrassed by her weakness, but the nurse didn't stop her. "Do you have someone we can call?" the nurse asked softly. The question hit harder than the pain. Amara shook her head slowly. "No." The nurse didn't press. She adjusted the blanket instead. That small act almost broke Amara completely. When the nurse left, the room felt larger, emptier. The beeping machine beside her suddenly sounded louder, like it was counting something she didn't want to lose. She stared at the ceiling and thought about the word alone. She had never felt it like this before. Not when her mother died. Not when she married a man who never truly saw her. Not even when she walked out of that house. This was different. This was knowing that if something went wrong, no one would rush in calling her name. Her phone sat on the small table beside the bed. Someone must have put it there. She stared at it for a long time without touching it. She already knew there were messages waiting. She already knew who they were from. She didn't want his words near her body. Not now. Not here. A doctor came in later. Middle-aged, tired eyes, honest voice. "You were lucky," he said plainly. "Another hour of stress and this could have gone very differently." Amara closed her eyes. "But it didn't." "No," he agreed. "Because you got help. Remember that." After he left, she lay there replaying the night over and over again. The suitcase, the door, the pain, the streetlights blurring as she waved at strangers. She realized something then. Leaving hadn't almost destroyed her. Staying would have. That truth settled inside her slowly, painfully, but firmly. Later that afternoon, a hospital administrator came in holding a clipboard. Her tone was polite, distant. "We need some information," she said. "Emergency contact, insurance, marital status." Marital status. Amara hesitated. The word sat between past and future like a knife. "Separated," she said finally. Her voice didn't shake this time. The woman nodded and scribbled something down. Then she slid a form closer. "There's also a consent form," she said, "in case of emergency decisions." Amara picked up the pen. Her hand hovered. In case of emergency. She thought of Ethan, his cold eyes, his laughter, his certainty that she would fail. Slowly, deliberately, she wrote a name. Her own. When the woman left, Amara stared at the signature like it belonged to someone else. A woman who didn't wait to be chosen. A woman who chose herself. That night, sleep came in fragments. Each time she drifted off, fear pulled her back. She dreamed of doors closing, of empty rooms, of a small heartbeat slipping away from her reach. She woke up crying softly, her hand pressed protectively over her stomach. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." The nurse on night duty paused at the door, listening for a moment, then quietly walked away, giving her privacy she desperately needed. Morning arrived slowly. Sunlight crept across the floor and climbed the wall. Amara watched it like proof that time was still moving, that life hadn't stopped because hers had cracked open. Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up. One message preview appeared on the screen. Not from Ethan, from an unknown number. Her heart skipped. She hesitated before opening it, a strange dread settling in her chest, as if some truths didn't wait politely for permission. The message contained only one sentence, a sentence that made Amara's fingers go numb and forced her to realize that leaving Ethan had already set something irreversible in motion. Amara's fingers hovered over the phone, trembling as if the device held not technology, but judgment. The message was simple, one line, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 nights she had spent crying alone. She blinked, trying to steady herself. Her stomach twisted as she read it again. The words burned into her vision. Her heart raced in a rhythm she didn't recognize. She had thought leaving Ethan would give her freedom. She had thought escaping his cold eyes, his mocking laugh would be enough. But this message reminded her that nothing about him had left her life completely. Her breath caught. She clutched the phone tighter. Her knuckles turned white. The room felt smaller now, heavier. Every sound of the hospital, machines, footsteps, distant voices, pushed her anxiety higher. Her body ached. The baby moved gently, a flutter, a reminder that life persisted, even in the midst of fear. She pressed her hand to her stomach instinctively, drawing strength from the small, stubborn heartbeat inside her. A part of her wanted to ignore the message, delete it, pretend it didn't exist. Another part, the part that had endured nights on the floor with nothing but faith and determination, compelled her to read it again. Slowly she unlocked her phone. The screen showed only the number, no name. The message itself: I know what you did, and he will too. He needs to see. Today. Amara froze. Her mind raced. See what? She whispered, voice barely audible. Her stomach tightened. Her pulse spiked. Cold sweat broke across her forehead. The room, the lights, even the soft hum of the machines seemed suddenly alien. She sank back against the pillows. Her eyes roamed the ceiling, trying to escape the suffocating weight of anticipation. Her first instinct was fear. The fear of Ethan. The fear of the unknown. The fear of losing control over what little stability she had carved out for herself. Her mind jumped ahead to possibilities. Had he found out she left? Had someone followed her? Was her child in danger? The rational part of her tried to calm the rising panic. She reminded herself she was not powerless. She had survived the night of almost losing everything. She had left a man who thought she was too stupid, and she had survived. Yet the message gnawed at her, its certainty, its implication. Someone knew, someone was watching. Someone would force her back into a world she had fought to escape. The nurse entered, noticing the tense expression on Amara's face. "You've been awake for a while," she said. "Do you want some water?" Amara shook her head, ignoring the phone. The nurse didn't press. She understood that some fears were private, some battles fought alone. Hours passed. Amara stared at the ceiling, tracing the lines in the plaster as if they were a road map out of danger. Every thought of Ethan came uninvited. She remembered his blue eyes, the sharpness of his jaw, the cruelty in his laughter when he had called her too stupid. She remembered every word, every dismissal, every night she had begged silently for a sliver of humanity from him, and she realized with a strange clarity that part of her still feared him. But another part, deeper and stronger, was angry. Not at him, at herself, for ever believing she needed him. She realized survival was not enough. She had to be smarter, stronger. She had to anticipate the moves of a man who believed he could dictate everything. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, same number, same brevity. Meet him at the school, alone, 8:30 a.m. The word struck her harder than pain. Alone, alone. No safety, no shield, no support. Her fingers tightened around the phone, her chest constricted. Fear threatened to take over, but then anger rose. This was the man who had mocked her. This was the man who had walked away while she carried his child. And yet, he wanted to control her even now. She pressed her lips together. Her eyes burned with resolve. She would not run. She would not beg. She would face whatever this was, but on her terms. She looked down at her stomach. Noah, though he was yet unborn, was the reason she would not falter. The small heartbeat she could feel through her hand was a reminder that she had already survived worse. She had survived abandonment. She had survived fear. She had survived betrayal. She would survive this. A thought struck her sharply. What if Ethan had no idea she had survived? What if he believed she had broken? The realization sparked something new. Strategy. She would not go in blind. She would not allow him to see weakness. She would make him see her strength. But how? Her mind spun through options, each one riskier than the last. Each one could expose her child. Each one could betray the fragile sanctuary she had built. She leaned back against the pillow, overwhelmed yet alert. Every instinct screamed danger. Every fiber of her body warned her to flee. But every part of her soul, the part that had kept her alive when she was alone on the streets, that had borne pain silently in the night, told her that this was a turning point. The choice to confront him, to protect herself, to assert her control over her life, was no longer optional. It was necessary. Amara closed her eyes, taking a long, deliberate breath. She visualized the scene. The school gate, the crowd of children, the teachers milling about, and him, the man who had once called her stupid, whose arrogance had scarred her, whose absence had made her stronger. She imagined him seeing her, her posture firm, her gaze steady. No tears, no weakness, no apology, only the woman who had survived. Her heartbeat quickened. The reality of what she was about to do sank in. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was necessary. She didn't know what he would do. She didn't know what she would say. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She would not allow him to dictate the terms of her life or her child's. Hours later, as the sun rose higher, casting its golden light into the sterile hospital room, Amara made her decision. She would go. She would face him. And she would do it alone. The nurse returned, noticing the determination in Amara's eyes. "You're moving faster than I expected," she said softly. Amara managed a tight smile. "Some things can't wait," she whispered. She left the hospital in a cab, clutching her small hospital bag. Every step outside felt heavy and light at the same time. She was leaving safety behind. Yet for the first time in years, she felt alive. She thought of her child, the life inside her that depended on her, that life made the risk worthwhile. The cab wound through the streets. Amara stared out the window at the city that had once terrified her, at the cars, the people, the buildings that seemed to mock her fragility. Now she felt no mockery, only possibility. She rehearsed her entrance, what she would say, what she would not say, the words to protect her child, the stance to protect herself. Her mind was sharp. Every memory of Ethan's cruelty sharpened her focus. Every memory of his arrogance fueled her determination. She realized she didn't want revenge. Not yet. She wanted control. Control over her own life, over her child's future, over her dignity. The cab stopped in front of the school. Her stomach knotted. The gates loomed ahead. Children ran about, unaware of the storm that was about to arrive. Parents chatted, teachers directed. Life moved in gentle rhythm. She took a deep breath. One last breath. before stepping into the place where the past and present would collide. She opened the door and stepped out. Her heart thundered. Her hands shook slightly. Her eyes scanned. And then she saw him. Ethan stood at the school gate just beyond the crowd, unaware of her presence until their eyes met. And in that moment, Amara realized he had no idea the strength she had built in the 5 years he thought she was broken. And that realization made her pulse spike with both fear and power. Ethan froze. His blue eyes widened slightly, the kind of subtle shift only someone who had spent a lifetime controlling everything could notice. He had seen her, Amara, standing there, taller than he remembered, radiating a confidence. That had nothing to do with him. She wasn't the frightened woman who had clutched his hand 5 years ago. She wasn't the woman who had fallen to the floor, alone and broken. She was a storm he had never anticipated. For a moment he couldn't speak. He didn't move. The crowd around them became irrelevant. Children ran, parents chatted, teachers waved. Everything faded into the background. All that mattered was her. Her eyes, calm but sharp, meeting his. There was no fear there, no plea, no longing, only recognition and strength. Amara's chest rose and fell steadily. Her hand rested lightly on the strap of her bag. Inside, her phone buzzed faintly, a reminder that someone had wanted her to meet him here. Someone had forced this collision, yet she had chosen to be here. On her own terms. Ethan finally spoke. Amara, he said carefully, as if the name itself was dangerous. She didn't move a muscle. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched him. The arrogance, the charm, the power, it was still there, but it didn't touch her. He took a step closer instinctively, as if proximity could bend reality back to the way it had been. I didn't expect to see you here, he admitted, voice low. Her lips curved faintly. Not a smile, a line of defiance. I came because I was told you needed to see me, she replied calmly. Ethan blinked, not understanding, confused. He thought he had orchestrated everything, controlled the past, controlled the present. But she had moved in directions he had never accounted for. She had survived, flourished, changed. The realization hit him harder than any loss ever could. His jaw tightened. Your child, he said, trying to assert control. You shouldn't. She raised a hand slightly, cutting him off. Don't, she said. Her tone was measured, cold enough to pierce. Don't lecture me on what I should or shouldn't do with my son. Not after the choices you made. Ethan's chest tightened. Her words weren't accusations. They were facts. The undeniable truth he had ignored for years. He looked at the small boy by her side, Noah. 4 years old, his hair a perfect blend of hers and a subtle hint of him, his eyes dark brown but carrying an echo of Ethan's blue when the light hit at the right angle. The boy clutched her hand, looking between them with curiosity and mild apprehension. Ethan's lips parted. For the first time he felt something heavier than power. Fear. Not for himself, but for what he had lost. Amara noticed his hesitation. Her gaze softened just slightly, not enough for comfort, just enough to let him know she understood him. He opened his mouth again, this time with a hint of desperation. Noah, he's my son. Yes, she said, simple, plain, true. He swallowed hard. I want to see him, he whispered. The words were hesitant, fragile. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something alien, vulnerability. Amara's eyes narrowed slightly. You want to see him? She repeated. Yes, he admitted. The words felt like betrayal to his old self. Yet he couldn't lie. She studied him carefully, measuring, calculating. Do you? She asked finally. The question hung between them like a guillotine. Ethan's throat tightened. Yes, he repeated. She stepped closer, slowly, keeping Noah between them. Her hand rested lightly on the boy's shoulder. Protective, firm. Ethan's blue eyes darted to Noah and then back to Amara. "Let me," he began. "No," she interrupted sharply, not angrily, but decisively. "You lost that right the day you walked away, the day you mocked me, the day you left your own child alone." Her words hit him like ice water. A part of him wanted to protest. Another part, the part that had never known truth before, wanted to melt into the guilt. He stood frozen. The crowd around them remained oblivious. No one noticed the battle between past and present, strength and weakness, fear and pride. Ethan's lips moved, then paused. I didn't know," he said softly. "No," Amara replied, her voice steady, cutting through the hesitation. "You didn't care. You didn't look back. You chose someone else. You chose your life over ours." He swallowed hard. I was wrong," he admitted quietly. The words felt foreign in his own mouth. Amara studied him, noting the tiny cracks in his armor. "Wrong doesn't erase what you did," she said. She knelt slightly to Noah's level, gathering him into her arms. The boy smiled faintly, as if sensing her strength. Ethan's chest tightened, watching this simple act. He realized painfully that no money, no influence, no charm, no apology would ever replace the years he had missed. He began again, but she shook her head. "No," she said softly. "Don't. Not yet. Not for me. Not for him. Actions speak louder than your words." Her gaze fixed him like a mirror. "I survived without you. I raised him without you. I lived without you. And I am stronger because of it." The truth hit him in a way he had never anticipated. For once, power had no meaning. Ethan felt the vulnerability he had spent a lifetime avoiding. Not fear of loss, fear of facing what he could never undo. And in that moment he understood the scale of his mistakes, not as a businessman, not as a man of influence, but as a father. Amara stood now, Noah in her arms, her eyes never leaving his. The silence stretched, heavy, tense. Ethan wanted to reach for her, wanted to take back the years he had wasted, wanted to hold his son and fix the past. But he knew instinctively that she would not allow it. Not yet. He had to earn it. She had made that clear with one single look. One act of protective love. One measure of control over the life she had fought to preserve. The crowd moved around them. Parents called their children. Teachers smiled at small successes. Life continued in its oblivious rhythm. Yet in that small circle, time had stopped. Amara and Ethan stood at the threshold of confrontation, truth, and reckoning. Neither backing down, neither giving up. The child between them was the living symbol of everything they had lost and everything they could still gain. Ethan finally spoke, voice low and ragged with emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "Let me see him, please." Amara didn't answer immediately. She held Noah closer, measured, thought. Then she said softly, almost to herself, "You'll have to prove you deserve it." Ethan's chest tightened. He nodded slowly. He had no idea how, yet he understood fully what she meant. The air between them was charged, not with anger, not with hate, but with possibility and fear, and the realization that nothing would ever be simple again. Amara glanced toward the school gate, then back at Ethan. She whispered to herself, almost a warning, 5 years of absence. Now you have one chance and one chance only. Ethan's gaze locked with hers, and in that instant both of them knew the fragile calm could shatter at any second, and the first move could change everything forever. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of her words pressing down on him like nothing else ever had. One chance. Her tone left no room for negotiation, no room for excuses, no room for arrogance. He swallowed hard, struggling to steady the tremor in his chest that had nothing to do with the brisk morning air. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. The boy, Noah, shifted in Amara's arms, glancing up at Ethan with wide, curious eyes. He reached for the man instinctively, the way children did, expecting warmth, expecting recognition. Ethan froze, his fingers twitching involuntarily. It had been years since he had felt this longing, since he had thought about tenderness without control, since he had felt the fragile pull of being needed. Amara's gaze flicked to Noah, softening just enough for the boy to sense her calm strength. "You'll wait here," she said gently to Ethan, her tone firm yet measured. He blinked. "Wait? Yes. Prove that you can stand still, respect boundaries, and be here without demanding." Ethan's jaw tightened. Pride and guilt warred within him. He had never been told to wait, never been forced to hold himself accountable for patience. Now this woman, this life he had abandoned, was the one setting the rules. He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I can do that," he said quietly, almost to himself. Amara didn't respond. She turned to walk away with Noah, her steps deliberate, confident, each step a silent declaration. Ethan's eyes followed her. She carried herself like a queen in a world he had never been able to dominate completely. The boy tugged lightly at her hand, pointing toward the playground. Noah's laughter was light, melodic, and filled with a carefree innocence Ethan had never known in his own childhood. The sound hit him sharply, like a mirror showing the life he had missed. Ethan's chest ached, an unfamiliar pain. He watched them from a distance, every instinct screaming to run forward, to claim what was biologically his. But another voice, quieter but stronger, held him in place. Respect. Boundaries. Amara had not said, "Come to us." She had said, "Wait." The test had begun. Hours passed slowly. Ethan remained rooted to the spot. Every movement, every glance from Amara, every laugh from Noah felt like a lesson. The sun climbed higher, painting the playground in gold, yet Ethan felt nothing but the shadow of his past choices. He noticed other parents watching, curious but unaware of the silent storm unfolding between him and Amara. He felt the weight of judgment, though no one knew what they were judging. The boy ran toward a swing, his mother following. Amara lifted him carefully, setting him in motion, her laughter mingling with his. Ethan's throat tightened again. A man who had owned empires, controlled cities, and commanded loyalty now found himself powerless in the presence of a woman and a child he had abandoned. Amara noticed him watching, but she did not invite him. She only glanced briefly, her eyes unreadable, almost calculating. It was not hatred. It was measured control. Ethan clenched his fists at his sides. He had never been made to wait, never been made to reflect, never been forced to witness without interference. And yet, something in him shifted. For the first time, he considered the impact of absence, the cost of arrogance, the reality of loss. The boy laughed again, pointing at a small bird perched nearby. Ethan's eyes softened involuntarily. He wanted to reach for him. He wanted to scoop him up. But he stayed rooted, realizing that any sudden movement would break the fragile bridge Amara had built between them. He exhaled. He was learning patience in the most brutal way possible. Amara approached a small bench nearby and sat down, letting Noah climb onto her lap. Ethan observed silently. Every action of hers was deliberate, protective, loving. Not a shred of weakness, not a hint of longing for him. And yet he realized he was the one yearning, not she. He had expected confrontation, perhaps anger, perhaps tears. Instead, she commanded respect without speaking it aloud. He realized suddenly that proving himself would not be about words, not about money, charm, or influence. It would be about understanding, patience, and dedication. And for the first time, he felt the enormity of the gap he had to cross. Noah leaned forward, tugging at a small branch nearby. "Look, Mama." "The bird." Amara smiled, genuine and light. She lifted the boy so he could see better, and the sun caught the strands of her hair, haloing her in golden light. Ethan felt a pang of regret sharper than any he had ever known. The test was unfolding silently, but with the weight of consequences. He realized then that this was not about reconciliation, not about reclaiming what he had lost. It was about proving he could be different, that he could respect boundaries, that he could stand by without claiming control. Hours passed, and still he remained. He watched her comfort Noah after a small tumble, dry tears on his cheeks with careful hands. He noticed the way she spoke, gentle but firm. The boy nodded and smiled, reassured. Every small interaction taught him something he had never learned in the corridors of power or the skyscrapers he had built. Ethan's chest ached, but in a different way than before. Pain mixed with clarity, humility. The lessons were brutal, but necessary, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the playground. A small commotion drew their attention. A child had wandered too far toward the street, and a teacher sprinted to intervene. Amara's protective instinct kicked in immediately. She lifted Noah, keeping him close, scanning the area with hawk-like precision. Ethan noticed her stance, unwavering, controlled, and it struck him again. The woman he had once dismissed had become a force he could neither command nor predict. He exhaled slowly, understanding finally that words alone would not be enough. The child's safety, the mother's strength, the fragile bond between them, all demanded action, not declarations. For the first time, Ethan realized that proving himself would require more than acknowledgement. It would require time, patience, sacrifice, and unwavering presence. And yet a small, unfamiliar hope flickered in his chest. Could he do it? Did he even deserve the chance? Amara set Noah down gently, adjusting his small backpack, and looked up at him. Her eyes, steady and unwavering, caught his again. She did not smile, she did not soften, but there was a quiet acknowledgement, almost imperceptible, that she had noticed his restraint. He had not rushed forward. He had not demanded. He had not tried to claim what he had lost. And for the first time, Ethan felt the stirrings of a respect he had never known before. A long, silent moment passed between them, heavy with unspoken understanding and challenge. Amara turned slightly, pulling Noah closer as she began walking towards the school entrance. Ethan followed at a distance, careful not to close the gap. Each step was a test, each glance a judgment. He realized that everything he thought he knew about power was irrelevant here. Everything he had believed about control, influence, and domination had no weight in the quiet determination of a mother protecting her child. He felt a small spark of fear, not of her, of himself, of whether he could measure up to the challenge she had silently laid before him. Noah glanced back at Ethan, unafraid, curious, sensing something he couldn't yet comprehend. The boy's trust was tentative but willing. Amara noticed, and for the first time she allowed a faint nod, not approval, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement. Ethan's heart skipped. He realized the stakes were higher than he had imagined. It wasn't just about seeing his son. It was about proving he could stand beside them without trying to dominate. The weight of 5 years of mistakes pressed on him like a physical force. And yet, he felt alive in a way he had not in years, because the path to redemption had begun. And Amara had placed it entirely in his hands. Every step toward the school doors became a silent promise to be different, to be patient, to earn what he had abandoned. And yet he knew that any misstep, any sign of weakness, could undo everything he had begun to realize about himself. As they reached the threshold of the school entrance, Amara glanced back one last time, her eyes piercing, her expression unreadable, and whispered under her breath just loud enough for Ethan to hear, "Show me you deserve to be here, or step back and never come close again." Ethan froze, understanding fully that this single moment could define not just his future with Noah, but the life he had lost 5 years ago. Ethan stood frozen, the words Amara had whispered still lingering in the air. "Show me you deserve to be here, or step back and never come close again." They were not a threat in the ordinary sense. They were a decree, a judgment rendered quietly, but heavy enough to make him feel the weight of 5 years of absence pressing down on his chest. He swallowed, feeling the burn in his throat. The world around them, the school, the parents, the children laughing, faded to irrelevance. All that mattered was the small circle of ground they occupied. Noah held Amara's hand, sensing tension in the air. His small grip tightened, his tiny fingers curling around hers. Ethan noticed it and realized that trust had been given in part, but he had not earned it fully. Not yet. Amara's eyes studied him, not with anger, not with pity, with calculation, a measured precision that demanded accountability. Ethan stepped forward slowly, one foot, then the other. Every muscle in his body resisted the instinct to rush forward, to claim what he had once abandoned without thought. He forced himself to move deliberately, carefully, a silent promise to honor her terms. Noah looked up at him curiously, his small, dark eyes unafraid, almost expectant. Ethan felt a pang of both guilt and longing. He wanted to reach for him, to hold him, to speak words that had been left unsaid for years. But he resisted. The lesson Amara was teaching him was clear. Patience, observation, respect. All things he had never truly mastered. Amara led Noah to a small bench nearby, gesturing for him to sit. The boy climbed up obediently, glancing back at Ethan once, a tentative acknowledgement. Then he focused again on his mother. Ethan's chest ached. The years he had missed, the moments he had abandoned, pressed down with suffocating force. He looked at Amara, the woman he had once thought naive, too stupid to succeed, had transformed. Her posture was firm, her expression controlled, her movements gentle but commanding. She radiated authority without arrogance, power without cruelty. It was a revelation he hadn't anticipated. She was everything he had underestimated. He wanted to speak, apologize, beg, explain. But he knew words were worthless here. Actions were the measure. So he stayed silent. The first challenge came unexpectedly. A child from another class ran toward Noah, chasing a ball that had rolled too far. Noah rose instinctively, stepping toward the street. Amara reacted instantly. She swooped forward, gently pulling Noah back, shielding him with her body. Ethan watched, his stomach twisting. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to help, to claim what he had lost. But he remembered her command. Wait, observe, prove. The tension in him stretched taut. He could feel his heart hammering, each beat a reminder of the cost of his absence. Noah's small hands clung to Amara's blouse, eyes wide. She bent slightly, smoothing his hair, speaking softly. Her voice was calm, filled with reassurance. Ethan felt a stab of admiration and regret simultaneously. The child's safety was secured by her alone. All he could do was watch and learn. Hours passed. Ethan remained at the periphery, careful not to intervene unless asked. Every smile from Noah, every gentle correction from Amara, became a lesson in humility. Ethan realized he had spent decades commanding people with wealth and influence, and yet here he was powerless, powerless in the face of love, patience, and maternal instinct. He began to understand the magnitude of his mistakes, the years lost, the moments missed, the trust he would now have to earn, step by painstaking step. Amara noticed his gaze occasionally. She did not soften. She did not call him forward. She only measured him, gauged him, silently questioning his intent. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the first tremors of transformation within himself. This was unfamiliar territory. He was learning restraint, humility, and reverence for someone who had survived without him. A teacher approached, addressing Noah briefly about an upcoming school activity. Amara nodded, listening attentively, guiding her son gently. Ethan observed, absorbing every motion, every word, every nuance. She was teaching him lessons he could never have learned in boardrooms or business meetings. Lessons about humanity, about care, about consequence. When the activity ended, Amara lifted Noah, adjusting his backpack carefully, and looked toward Ethan. He met her gaze. There was no immediate approval, no forgiveness, no warmth. But there was acknowledgement, a recognition that he was trying. The first small bridge had been built. Ethan took another slow step forward, his pulse racing. This time he spoke. "Amara," he said quietly. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she kept Noah close, her eyes steady, unwavering. I want to be here for him," he continued. The words felt fragile, untested, but honest. She studied him for a long moment. The wind stirred the strands of her hair, brushing across her face like a subtle veil. Ethan noticed every detail, the curve of her lips, the calm strength in her posture, the depth of her eyes that had witnessed so much and yet remained resolute. Finally, she spoke. "You will have to prove it," she said softly, almost a whisper. Not a challenge, not a threat. A declaration. Ethan nodded, understanding fully the gravity of her terms. No shortcuts, no entitlement, no claiming what he had abandoned. He would earn it, one step at a time. The day passed slowly. Ethan observed, learned, and held himself back at every turn. Amara guided Noah, navigating minor incidents, comforting other children, and teaching lessons with a patience that stunned him. Each interaction became a mirror for his shortcomings. He realized he had spent a lifetime seeking control. And now control meant nothing. Presence, patience, and respect were everything. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, Amara gathered Noah's belongings. It was time to leave. She glanced at Ethan. He noticed a slight softening in her eyes, imperceptible to anyone else, but monumental in its implication. It was recognition, not trust, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. The cab ride home was quiet. Ethan kept his distance, allowing them space. Noah chattered about his day, pointing out small victories and fun moments. Amara listened, occasionally smiling, occasionally correcting, always maintaining gentle authority. Ethan watched, absorbing every detail. Every small smile from Noah, every protective glance from Amara, every movement that reflected years of strength she had built on her own. By the time they arrived home, the sun had set completely. Amara led Noah inside, shutting the door softly behind them. Ethan remained on the porch, hesitating. She didn't call him forward. She didn't invite him in. He understood instantly. This was part of the test. A lesson in patience and humility, delivered silently but powerfully. He stayed there for a long moment, contemplating the enormity of what he had witnessed, her strength, her unwavering resolve, the bond between her and Noah. He realized that rebuilding his life with them would require more than money, more than charm, more than apology. It would require transformation, time, consistency, presence, and absolute humility. Finally, he stepped back, understanding that this was only the beginning. He was no longer in control. He was a student, a man humbled by love, absence, and consequence. The night fell, and the lights in the house glowed warmly. Ethan's shadow stretched across the lawn. He knew the coming days would test him in ways he had never anticipated. And yet, for the first time, he felt hope. A fragile, cautious hope, because for the first time in years he had a purpose beyond himself, a path to redemption, and a chance to reclaim what he had lost, if he was strong enough to earn it. As Ethan turned to leave, a soft knock echoed from the door behind him. He froze. Noah's voice, small and urgent, came from inside the house. "Daddy, can you come in?" Ethan's hand hovered over the doorknob, heart racing. He realized that stepping inside now could either cement the fragile trust he had begun to build, or destroy it forever. Ethan's hand hovered over the doorknob, a simple object that now felt heavier than any boardroom, desk, any contract, any empire he had built. He could hear Noah's small voice again, insistent yet uncertain. "Daddy, can you come in?" The boy's tone tugged at something deep within him, a mixture of longing, guilt, and hope that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Amara stood in the background, watching silently, every movement controlled, every glance measured. Her eyes weren't soft, they weren't forgiving. They were careful, assessing, as though each second of his hesitation was another metric to evaluate. Ethan swallowed, taking a slow, deliberate breath. He could step back and preserve what little pride he had left, remain on the porch, remain outside the fragile bubble she had built around her son. Or he could step forward, risking rejection, risking failure, risking the possibility that all his efforts over the past hours might be for nothing. He pushed the door open gently. The creak of the hinges sounded louder than it should have, slicing through the quiet evening. Noah's eyes lit up instantly. "Daddy!" he exclaimed, throwing himself toward Ethan. Ethan knelt quickly, catching the boy in his arms, his chest tightening as he held him close. The smell of Noah, his innocence, his small body, the warmth of his skin was overwhelming. He realized he had missed this more than anything else he had ever desired. Amara stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on the back of the couch, observing silently. Not intruding, not judging, not yet, but measuring. Ethan held Noah at arm's length for a moment, looking into those deep brown eyes, seeing the reflection of himself and the life he had walked away from. "Hey, buddy," he whispered, voice hoarse. Noah giggled softly, reaching up to touch his father's face, unafraid, unreserved. Ethan's throat burned. Every instinct screamed at him to make promises he wasn't sure he could keep, but he stayed quiet. He understood finally that words were secondary. Presence was the first measure. Amara cleared her throat softly, drawing his attention. "You can sit," she said. Her tone wasn't warm, it wasn't welcoming. It was neutral, controlled, demanding respect. Ethan nodded, lowering himself carefully onto the couch beside them. Noah snuggled close, and Ethan felt the small weight of the boy's trust, heavy with expectation. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the lights and Noah's occasional chatter about his day. Amara remained standing, arms crossed, observing every interaction. Ethan spoke softly, careful, deliberate, answering Noah's questions without overstepping. Every word, every gesture was measured. He realized that proving himself would not be about grand declarations or dramatic apologies. It would be about patience, consistency, awareness. Hours passed like this, small victories measured in quiet laughter, in shared stories, in gentle corrections. Ethan felt the first spark of hope he had known in years. But the test was far from over. Amara eventually moved to prepare dinner, keeping an eye on both of them. The kitchen filled with the smell of simmering vegetables and herbs, grounding the room with normalcy. Noah remained close to Ethan, occasionally pointing out items in the kitchen, asking innocent questions about pots and pans. Ethan answered carefully, humor softening his voice at times. Noah laughed genuinely. Ethan's chest felt lighter, but he knew the weight of scrutiny was not gone. Amara returned, placing a plate in front of her son, and gestured to Ethan to sit at the table with them. He hesitated, watching her carefully, waiting for permission. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She simply observed. He understood. The silent approval she granted was earned, not given. Dinner was quiet, with Noah chattering constantly and Ethan responding attentively. Amara listened, occasionally interjecting to correct, guide, or redirect. It was a subtle dance. One misstep could undo the fragile trust being built. Ethan felt each move, each pause, each glance, as though he were navigating a minefield. Noah reached across the table suddenly, pointing toward a small toy car on the counter. "Can Daddy see?" he asked. Ethan picked up the toy gently, rolling it toward Noah, who grabbed it eagerly. A small smile broke across the boy's face. Amara's gaze shifted slightly, not approving, not forgiving, but acknowledging the simple act. The evening progressed. Noah's energy waned, eyelids drooping as the day's excitement caught up with him. Ethan guided him gently to the couch, lifting the boy into his arms, and Amara stepped closer to tuck a blanket around him. Her movements were precise, tender, protective. Ethan felt the weight of the years he had missed. He realized he could not reclaim time. He could only be present now. She caught his gaze briefly, and something flickered in her eyes. A question, a challenge, a subtle test. Ethan understood immediately. His actions in these moments mattered far more than any words he could speak. The night deepened, and Noah finally drifted into sleep. Ethan sat back, staring at the boy's peaceful face. He felt a surge of responsibility stronger than anything he had felt in the boardroom or in power. Amara moved quietly to the kitchen, cleaning the last dishes, but kept an ear attuned to the room. Ethan rose slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile peace. He understood, finally, that earning trust was a long, quiet process. Not a gesture, not a declaration, not a rush to claim what had been lost. As he stepped toward the door to leave for the night, Amara's voice stopped him softly. "Stay," she said. He froze. Not a demand, not an order, but a test. One that measured whether he could follow her terms, respect her boundaries, and remain present without trying to dominate. Ethan nodded slowly. He remained. She turned back to the kitchen, moving with quiet efficiency, leaving him and Noah alone for a moment. The room was calm, but the tension lingered, subtle, potent. Ethan's heart raced. He realized that redemption was possible, but fragile, and the window for failure was narrow. Hours later, as the clock ticked toward midnight, Amara approached him silently, her eyes steady, her presence commanding. She gestured toward the sofa. "Sit," she said. He obeyed, understanding that these simple commands carried the weight of judgment. The night stretched long. Conversations were quiet. Moments of silence spoke louder than words. Ethan realized he was learning more about responsibility, patience, and respect in this single evening than he had in years of power and wealth. Noah stirred slightly in his sleep, murmuring. Ethan's hand instinctively rested gently on his back, and Amara's eyes caught his movement. She didn't speak, but the small flicker in her gaze was recognition, a first acknowledgement of effort. He felt hope stir cautiously in his chest, a fragile, tentative hope. The night continued, filled with small lessons, subtle tests, and quiet revelations. By the time the clock approached 1 in the morning, Ethan realized he had been changed. Not fully, not entirely redeemed, but changed. He had learned patience. He had learned presence. He had begun to understand the weight of his absence, and he had begun to see the small steps he must take to regain trust. The night was far from over, and the path ahead remained treacherous. But for the first time in years, he felt he was walking in the right direction. As Ethan finally rose to leave, a soft knock echoed from the front door. Noah stirred slightly, and Amara's voice came quietly from the kitchen. "Ethan, this isn't over. Someone is watching us." Ethan froze. The calm they had fought so hard to achieve suddenly shattered, leaving an ominous shadow over everything they had begun to rebuild. Ethan froze at the knock, his pulse spiking like a drumbeat in the quiet night. Noah stirred slightly in his sleep, muffling a soft whimper against the couch. Amara's eyes met his, calm but sharp, as if reading the tension etched into his very soul. "Someone is watching us," she whispered again, barely audible, but enough to send a jolt of awareness through him. The night outside felt suddenly colder, darker, loaded with unseen eyes and unspoken threats. Ethan swallowed hard, every instinct screaming to rush forward, to confront, to shield. But he forced himself to breathe. This was another test, another moment where patience, presence, and understanding would define the difference between failure and trust. Amara stepped closer, guiding Noah instinctively in her arms. "He can't see us," she muttered, more to herself than to Ethan, though he caught every word. Ethan nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation without speaking. He realized, painfully, that he had spent so many years trying to control everything outside himself. Yet now, control felt like an illusion. The knock repeated, softer this time, hesitant but deliberate. Amara set Noah down gently, positioning him behind her as she moved toward the door. Ethan followed slowly, hands raised slightly, ready to intervene if necessary, but restrained, letting her lead. The handle turned with a quiet click. A figure stepped inside. Not a stranger, someone familiar, someone whose presence carried a weight Ethan hadn't anticipated. It was Lila, his sister-in-law from years past, the one who had always questioned his treatment of Amara, who had warned him against arrogance, who had tried to bridge the chasm he had created with his own choices. "Ethan," she said softly, voice tinged with worry, anger, and a touch of relief. Her eyes flicked immediately to Noah, then back to Amara, assessing the scene. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't expect you," he said carefully. Lila's gaze remained steady. "You didn't expect anyone who knows the truth?" she corrected. Amara's eyes narrowed slightly, instinctively protective, yet she didn't speak immediately. She allowed Ethan to introduce calm and control first. "I I've come to help," Lila said, her voice firm. "Help?" Amara asked, skeptical but alert. "Yes," Lila replied, glancing at Ethan meaningfully. "I know what he's trying to do, and I know what you're trying to protect. But there's more at stake than you realize." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had expected complications, but never from someone so close. Amara studied Lila carefully. "Speak," she said, the single word measured, demanding clarity. Lila nodded, taking a deep breath. "There are people from your past, Ethan. People who haven't forgiven your choices. People who see this moment, this reconciliation, as an opportunity." Ethan's mind raced, every instinct screaming danger. "Opportunity for what?" he demanded. "To hurt you, to hurt Amara, to hurt Noah," Lila said quietly, but the weight of her words was undeniable. Amara's protective instincts surged. She stepped closer to Noah, positioning herself between the child and any potential threat. Ethan's chest tightened. He realized immediately that the life they were beginning to rebuild could be threatened in an instant. And for the first time, he knew that love and protection required action, not distance. Lila continued, "You've underestimated them before, Ethan. You can't do it alone this time. You need a plan. You need vigilance." Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing every detail. He realized that rebuilding trust with Amara and Noah was only one battle. Another, far more dangerous, was just beginning. The room fell silent. Noah, sensing tension, pressed against Amara, muffling a small yawn. She glanced down at him, her hands firm yet gentle. Ethan watched, understanding more fully than ever the enormity of responsibility resting on him. Hours passed as they strategized quietly. Every movement, every word was deliberate. Amara listened carefully, her calm but measured presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Ethan felt himself growing, learning to balance caution with decisiveness, patience with urgency. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the walls as they prepared for what might come. Ethan glanced at Noah, sleeping soundly on the couch, and felt a surge of determination unlike anything he had experienced. He had missed years of his son's life. He would not miss another day. Amara noticed the fire in his eyes, the resolve. She didn't speak, only observed. Her silence was a test, and he accepted it willingly. By midnight, they had mapped out contingencies, safe spaces, and measures to protect Noah from any unseen threat. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he handled the minutiae, locks, alarms, routines, but the tremor was not fear. It was awareness, responsibility, growth. Amara finally spoke, her voice quiet but commanding. "You've begun to understand," she said, her eyes meeting his. "Not fully," Ethan admitted, "but enough to know what matters." Her gaze softened fractionally, not enough to forgive, not enough to forget, but enough to acknowledge his first steps toward redemption. A long, heavy silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the night outside. Noah stirred, murmuring in his sleep, clutching a small blanket. Ethan adjusted him gently, careful not to wake him, careful not to overstep. Amara observed, approving slightly with a subtle nod. It was progress, small, fragile, but real. The hours passed slowly, the weight of the past pressing upon all of them. Ethan reflected on his choices, his arrogance, his neglect. He realized that every empire, every fortune, every achievement meant nothing compared to the life he had abandoned. And yet, in that quiet night, he felt the first spark of true humility. By the early morning, Noah had drifted back into peaceful sleep. Ethan remained alert, vigilant, guarding both the boy and the fragile trust Amara had allowed him. She finally stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. No words were needed. The gesture said it all. She was allowing him, cautiously, into their lives, but only as far as he could prove himself worthy. Ethan understood. Every step forward from now on had to be deliberate, thoughtful, and grounded in presence, not entitlement. The dawn crept slowly through the windows, painting the room with soft light. Ethan realized that the first day of redemption had passed, but the battle for trust, safety, and connection was only beginning. And in that realization, he felt alive in a way he never had before. He had lost everything 5 years ago, and now he had the chance, fragile, difficult, and uncertain, to reclaim it. But he also knew that every misstep could destroy what they had just begun to rebuild. The room felt heavy with possibility and danger. A quiet tension lingered, like the calm before a storm. Ethan's gaze fell on Amara and Noah. He understood fully that love was no longer about dominance or possession. It was about vigilance. It was about patience. It was about proving oneself every single day. And for the first time, he welcomed the challenge, because this time failure would not be an option. Every fiber of his being, every ounce of his will, was focused on keeping them safe, earning trust, and becoming the man they deserved. The morning light spilled across the room, casting long shadows, illuminating the fragility and strength intertwined in their lives. Ethan stood by the window, watching the world awaken outside, feeling a strange combination of fear, hope, and responsibility. Amara remained seated, her eyes alert, her posture steady. But there was a subtle shift, a hint that she was considering the possibility of letting him in further. He knew it was conditional, tentative, but it was a start. And for the first time in 5 years, he felt that redemption might be within reach.